Across one of Earth's saltiest seas, a mystery has lingered for millennia. What happened to Sodom and Gomorrah? Ancient cities said to have fallen in an instant, by fire, by quake, by something even more catastrophic. Their exact location remains debated, their fate contested, their warning unforgettable. This investigation follows scripture, stone, and science to search for answers. We begin where text meets terrain. We'll explore the biblical narrative, journey with Abraham, and examine candidate sites near the Dead Sea. We will test evidence of destruction, fire, earthquake, perhaps even a cosmic airburst, and meet the researchers still excavating clues from dust and ash. The truth may be layered, fractured, and incomplete. But the questions are sharp. Where were these cities? How were they destroyed? And what endures from their story? Sodom and Gomorrah, an inquiry across time and terrain, a journey through faith, geology, and human memory. Before excavations and hypotheses, we return to the source. The story begins in the ancient texts. Chapter 1, the biblical story. In Genesis, cities rise beside a salt sea. Trade routes thread a fertile plain between stark ridges. Prosperity grows, markets bustle, and walls promise safety. Yet beneath success, something darker takes hold. The narrative turns from prosperity to warning. Messengers arrive, and judgment draws near. From the uplands, Abraham watches and pleads for mercy. His appeal frames the gravity of what follows. Below, families build lives on promising ground. Their choices and their leaders shape the city's fate. To test claims of ruin, we start with the text, then follow the landscape for clues. Sodom and Gomorrah are portrayed as prosperous urban centers, set near fertile margins and along active trade corridors by the Dead Sea. Their position brought goods, travelers, and revenue, making them influential hubs in a connected Bronze Age landscape. From above, the basin reveals why. Water sources, arable fringes, and routes threading valleys supported agriculture and exchange. Caravans moved along wadis and roads, linking north-south corridors and passing gates where taxes and stories were collected. Markets likely offered grain, salt, bitumen, and craft goods. Households grew around courtyards, workshops, and storerooms. To outsiders, walls and wealth signaled stability, order, and success. The ruins suggest tight lanes and mud brick blocks, typical urban fabric shaped by climate, materials, and defense. Pottery and stone fragments trace daily life, cooking, storage, trade, and help date construction and abandonment. Yet ancient texts also frame a critique of these cities, emphasizing social failure and harm within the community. The narrative highlights injustice and abuse of power, contrasting prosperity with a breakdown of ethical responsibility. The surrounding salt flats and cracked ground suggest a harsh setting where resources and risks coexist. Dusk over the basin underscores fragility. Cities rising beside faults, floods, and limited arable lands. Excavated layers reveal building phases, burn surfaces, and pauses in occupation, inviting careful interpretation. Trench by trench, tools expose stratigraphy, linking artifacts, architecture, and moments of change. As the light fades, the valley reads like a record: prosperity, pressure, and a turning point ahead. Text frames the story. The landscape preserves its echoes, awaiting context from evidence. Our path now rises toward the uplands that overlook the plain, where the next chapter begins. From those heights, the salt basin stretches to the horizon, cities and routes set against open sky. City to shore, shore to hills. The scene is set for events observed from a distance in the chapter ahead. Abraham, watching from the uplands, pleaded for mercy. He asked whether the cities might be spared for the sake of even a few righteous people. From the high ridges, the plain spread below, villages clustered by water, routes threading green against the desert. Dry wadis cut through eroded hills, channels that once carried seasonal rains toward the fertile basin. From the uplands, the plains below would have appeared fertile, threaded with routes that carried goods and stories. Caravan paths crossed the open land, bearing grain, salt, and news between distant settlements. Travelers traced worn routes across the sunlit plain, binding communities to markets and wells. Low mountains framed the valley where the cities stood, prosperous, vulnerable, and exposed. Then came the warning to Lot. Gather your household, do not delay. Flee the city, and do not look back. The message was urgent, the window brief. As evening fell, empty ruins silhouetted the horizon, and unease settled over the plain. The ground looked brittle, cracked earth and sparse shrubs, poised on the edge of change. Shadows lengthened, the distant horizon darkened, and the air grew still. A solitary hill marked the route of escape, rising towards safety beyond the plain. The stage is set for catastrophe, natural or otherwise. Overhead, clouds gathered in slow procession, and the landscape seemed to hold its breath. The rocks bore scars of older upheavals, reminders that sudden change lives here. Last light washed the saline flats in gold. The moment to depart was nearly gone. Twilight deepened, stars appeared, and the reckoning drew near. Near the southern Dead Sea, Bronze Age towns like Bab ed-Dra and Numeira anchor the cities of the plain debate. Bab ed-Dra rises above a dry wadi. Eroded walls and vast cemeteries with shaft tombs sketch a sizable early bronze community. Nearby, Numeira is more compact, mud brick blocks along a channel, with a destruction horizon suggesting abrupt abandonment. Settlement clusters track water and routes, springs, seasonal wadis, and trade corridors toward the Araba and Jordan Valley. Farther north, Tal el Hammam is proposed by some, citing regional prominence and a notable destruction layer in its sequence. Trenches and balks reveal house plans, lanes, and strata, occupation phases that can be dated and compared across sites. Exposed walls and rooms preserve domestic life, storage jars, hearths, and collapse layers sealed by time. Chronology, geography, and text exegesis define the dispute. Southern Basin versus Northern Valley models. The hypersaline shore has migrated for millennia. Ancient harbors and towns now sit far from today's waterline. Salt crusts and encrustations frame a restless basin. Sediments record climate swings and shoreline pulses. The Dead Sea Transform, a major plate boundary, has delivered earthquakes capable of reshaping cities and memories. North and South basins, the Lisan Peninsula, and fault traces set the regional canvas for settlement and catastrophe. Each site yields fragments, architecture, burials, burn layers, rapid abandonment that demand careful dating and correlation. Mortuary landscapes are extensive, cemetery fields near towns with tomb types shifting through time. Eroded mud brick and domestic debris show thermal damage in places, high-temperature signatures reported by some teams. But which, if any, were Sodom and Gomorrah? The evidence is compelling and contested. Researchers map candidate cities, routes, and fords, testing how well each model aligns with the biblical geography. Shorelines advanced and retreated. What was once lakeside could later stand high and dry above the basin. Whatever the identification, the Dead Sea's terrain and faults frame the next question: how the destruction unfolded. What followed was sudden and overwhelming. Walls failing, fires racing, and lives interrupted in a moment that reshaped this landscape and its memory. Among eroded mud brick and fields of tomb shafts, layers of ash and debris hint at destructive heat and a rapid end. Collapsed architecture near dry wadis preserves the moment of failure. Tumbled bricks, broken timbers, and a city stilled mid-motion. Along the saline shore, mineral crusts and calm water frame sites where residues and ash have survived in harsh conditions. Scholars debate the trigger. a major earthquake along the Dead Sea transformed, or an explosive natural disaster that ignited citywide fires. Maps of the basin show sites clustered by roots and water, close to an active fault, geography that can magnify hazard. Others point to high temperature effects, claims of scorched surfaces, vitrified mud brick, and unusual residues. Close details, ash-darkened soils, shattered walls, dispersed artifacts suggest intense burning and swift abandonment. Stratigraphy captures the sequence: thin ash lenses, collapse layers, and sudden stop in occupation. Yet erosion and later disturbance blur boundaries, making precise reconstruction difficult. Gridded excavations document context, sample for microarchaeology, and secure dates to test each hypothesis. Interpreting cause from consequence is complex. The record is fragmentary and overprinted by time. Comparative disasters help. Volcanic layers, seismic offsets, and suspected high-temperature signatures each leave different clues. Regional mapping asks whether sites share timing, patterns of damage, and ties to fault movement or fire. The wider basin, salt flats and distant hills, sets a harsh backdrop where traces can endure or vanish. No single line of evidence stands alone. Corroboration between geology, archaeology, and text is essential. Even near the fault trace, correlation is not causation. Only secure dates and matching signatures can build the case. The shoreline is quiet. The evidence speaks softly. We must read it with care. Ongoing research now tests these clues, in trenches and in labs, seeking the clearest story the strata can tell. Modern excavations refine the chronology and context of Dead Sea sites with each new season. At Tal el-Hammam, aerial grids and balks document walls, floors, and destruction layers, logged season by season. At Bab ed-Dra, the Tell and its shaft tomb fields outline a dense Bronze Age community and its abrupt end. Regional context matters. The saline shore, basin topography, and sediments frame every trench and profile. Finds move from trench to lab, ceramics typology, microarchaeology, and geochemistry, building dates and processes. Eroded mud brick faces reveal bonds, plaster, and burn reddening, clues to construction and high-temperature events. Numeira's compact rooms beside a wadi show collapse patterns, erosion cuts, and post-depositional change. Clean maps align sites with the Dead Sea transform, ancient watercourses, and trade corridors. GNSS, drone photogrammetry, and GIS tie artifacts to slope, fault scarps, and drainage networks. A southern cluster, Bab ed-Dra, Numeira, and nearby cemeteries, anchors one model for the cities of the plain. Shoreline cores and salt-encrusted flats capture dust, ash, and pollen that bracket occupation phases. Others place Tal el-Hammam to the north. Site markers help test competing chronologies and models. Each season yields data and fresh questions. Tool traces, sealed floors, and ash lenses are logged context by context for later synthesis. Cemetery patterns, grave goods, and radiocarbon dates trace lifeways, crisis, and decline. The search continues, carefully, methodically, and with respect for the past. Geologists track the fault for offsets and liquefaction features that could indicate seismic catastrophe. Mineral surfaces sometimes preserve microspherules and high-temperature residues, still under review. Together, maps and sediments situate these sites in a changing landscape we are still learning to read. Regardless of the cause, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah has endured for thousands of years as a powerful warning about the consequences of moral decline. Along these salt-crusted shores, the past whispers of choices and their outcomes, echoes still audible today. Ruins like Bab ed-Dra remind us that communities rise, flourish, and can fall by what they embrace and what they excuse. The ancient and the modern meet in our choices and communities. Stones, ash, and salt may hint at what happened. But the meaning lives in how we remember, study, and learn. Weathered walls echo a simple test. What do we build with care, and what do we allow to erode? From above, excavation grids mirror our effort to bring pattern to loss and light to uncertainty. The search for Sodom and Gomorrah is, ultimately, a search for understanding of the past and of ourselves. Every fracture holds a story. Interpretation asks for humility, patience, and care. Up close, the textures of decay call for integrity, personal, civic, and scholarly. Measured trenches become a metaphor. Careful cuts reveal layers we might otherwise miss. Even beauty, crystalline and bright, forms around absence, pressure, and time. Long shadows lend perspective, separating causes from effects and rumor from record. Through the channels of memory, we choose which currents to follow and which to resist. So researchers persist together, testing claims, welcoming challenge, and refining what we know. A quiet horizon invites pause, discern before we conclude, and listen before we speak. Maps and fault lines align story with geology. Responsibility aligns it with us. As the light softens, one lesson remains. Remember well, act wisely, and let understanding endure. Golden light skims the Dead Sea shore. A distant tell rises from the haze. We drift toward neat excavation grids, shade tarps fluttering faintly in the warm breeze. Chalk-white salt crusts fringe glassy water. Low hills rest quietly beyond the basin. At ground level, a desert tell spreads its eroded contours across sunlit sand. A clean regional map holds steady, basins, site markers, and the fault line in view. South of the sea, routes thread past markers, sketching an ancient landscape of travel. From above, eroded mud brick and scattered shaft tombs pattern the arid slope. Compact ruins cluster beside a dry wadi, stones catching soft afternoon light. Crystalline salt encrustations gleam. Tiny facets mirror sky and shore. Calm hypersaline waters reflect the clouds. Salt forms frame the foreground gently. Patterns of salt pans and shoreline geometry unfold in a cool, ordered mosaic. The coastline sweeps toward brown hills. Sea and desert meet in quiet balance. Mineral textures stack and flake, chalky, layered, delicate against the still water. Low waves lap at crystalline edges, glassy surfaces rippling with pale light. A wide panorama contrasts bright salt flats with deep umber desert slopes. Late sun draws long shadows along the shore. Highlights turn the crust to gold. A focused map view traces the Dead Sea transform and nearby archaeological pins. Tight along the shore, ripples crease salt-encrusted textures and shallow pools. We slide past mineral deposits, distant hills hover in cool blue. As dusk settles over the Dead Sea, we pause to honor the journey behind this story. From shoreline to highland, we traced clues across a stark and beautiful landscape. Salt, stone, and time, textures that hold fragments of memory. Over the tells and tomb fields, traces of lives still whisper through the earth. Mud brick and rubble remind us that cities rise and cities fall. Excavation grids mark the patient work that turns soil into knowledge. Maps gather what the ground reveals, aligning place, process, and possibility. Each new dawn invites careful methods, fresh questions, and humility. Through winding wadis, the land itself becomes an archive. The wider basin frames every hypothesis with scale and context. Shallow pools mirror the sky, asking us to look twice. Under the night, we remember how small we are, and how curious. Fault lines and scarps speak of forces still at work beneath our feet. In the squares, hands measure, sift, and record, one shard at a time. Quiet mounds and cemeteries call for respect, restraint, and care. Ruins keep watch over questions not easily answered. Crystals catch the light like data points, tiny, precise, and telling. Stepping back, we hold multiple models in view, open to revision. Our thanks to the many researchers, technicians, and storytellers whose work makes inquiry possible. Sodom and Gomorrah remind us of the consequences of actions and choices. Their story continues to challenge, teach, and intrigue humanity to this day. Until next time, like, share, and follow for more stories.